Hey guys, here we are with another Sister Scoop for this week, and I'm just going to call this the Thunderbolts episode because that's pretty much all it is at this point. We actually haven't gotten a lot of news outside of the Thunderbolts, so our three topics are fully relating to it. The first being, we have a full trailer.
Yeah, I mean, technically, we all probably saw this trailer in a really low res version because some heroes from some of the conventions this summer may or may not have shared it online for all of us who couldn't be there in person. So, shout out to you all. But yes, we finally got to see it in its official capacity in not grainy video of a screen on a screen, and it looks great. I think the one thing that everybody's talking about, let's just dive into it from a high level. Don't worry, we're still going to keep it to 10 minutes. We may have what seems like an answer to who bought Avengers Tower.
Yeah, and actually when you were setting that up, I was like, oh yeah, I can't believe Taylor picked up on this because it's Bucky related. So I thought it was something completely different that you were going to go with there.
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. But yes, we might have an answer. I'm not sure. And, people can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure that was ever a prevailing theory. I don't think it ever crossed my mind. I never saw it anywhere. I don't remember anybody talking about the possibility of it becoming the Thunderbolts Tower, which, what?
No, I mean, I feel like we've guessed it on other podcasts, and our running theory, our favorite theory, was always the Baxter Building. Now that we, are closer to the Fantastic Four, it is interesting that they finally revealed it's not the Baxter Building and Valentina bought it. But that has always been kind of our number one choice. And here we go. It's not. It's now like the dark side of the Avengers own the Avengers Tower, which has a nice narrative symmetry, so I'm very into it. I just was not expecting it.
That, and I also think it plays out really nicely in the sense of nobody knew where the Thunderbolts were going to go. And I think, well, if you have a home base, I feel like they're trying to say they're going to be here for more than just this single movie. So that's kind of what I also got from it was, hey, they've got a permanent setup. Like, the Avengers hung out in that tower for quite a while. Like, I'm expecting this from the Thunderbolts now. So I'm excited. Also, fanfiction girlies, Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes has officially entered the Avengers Tower. And I think that's really important for some of us. But speaking about him, the one thing I found from the trailer that I don't remember in the leak was we might have the return of the Winter Soldier, which I have so many feelings.
Little left arm, right arm switch up on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I saw that online and I immediately was like, I think Caitlin is going to lose her mind if she hasn't already. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I think in that shot, you actually see him shoot at Yelena and, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her dad's name, Red Guardian. And so at the time, before I saw the tweet talking about left arm, right arm, because one, I don't remember which one it is, but the Winter Soldier is, let's say, left-handed, and Bucky himself is right-handed. That's how you can tell which version of him he is. And they were talking about how he was shooting with his left hand, which would indicate potentially that it's the Winter Soldier and not Bucky in charge. But before I knew that, I was like, interesting that he's shooting at his own teammates, thinking maybe it's super early in the film and Valentina's maybe testing them out, putting them against one another. Who knows? But now it seems like maybe Bucky's gone a little rogue.
Well, and let's just clarify. If you ever need to know which one's which, if he's using the metal arm, it's the Winter Soldier. If he's using his right arm, it's not. It's Bucky in his own head. So, yes, that's kind of like the easy way to go about it. I've also noticed, I noticed this, and then obviously I'm really deep in Twitter on all of this, but, the weapon he shoots to blow up one of the cars, the exact same one he uses in the Winter Soldier. He has some of the same pieces of weaponry on him as well, and his vest and things like that. So it'll be interesting. Now I have no idea what I'm getting into. So I'm really excited as we get closer to that movie. I know it's not the first one of next year, but I am very excited as it gets closer to kind of see more and more coming out from it, because I cannot wait for this predictions episode. But we don't have the time to keep going on about this. We could do a whole thing all by itself. Let's move on to the next thing. which is that my guy Sebastian is out here going to bat for the MCU. I think this man has been an MCU defender since he joined, and I live for it. He's still one of the OGs, so I really appreciate when he sits here and he's like, no, Marvel still got it, and we're still making good things.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point too. Like, you need these big budget blockbuster films to fund, the Hollywood machine that basically creates the art house film. So if you're not making the money, you can't make the art. And I think that's such an interesting and nuanced, take on it, because you do have these, for lack of better term, highbrow directors coming in and saying, this isn't cinema. And then you're like, well, who do you think funds your cinema, quote unquote? Like, I'm so over, like, whatever. And I think Seb is kind of taking that as well, as like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And he does a lot of like indie movies in his
Yeah.
non-Bucky, repertoire. If you look at his IMDb, he's not doing, I mean, he is doing some of the bigger studio stuff, but he's also doing a lot of really smaller movies. So he, better than a lot of actors in the MCU, I think, would be able to say, I enjoy doing this MCU work because it allows me to do some of the less funded, less, studio machination type films, and it's all an ecosystem. It all works together.
Right. And I think that was a great point you just made, because I was going to say the same thing. As somebody who's pretty much seen almost everything that Sebastian Stan has ever been in, starting all the way back in like Gossip Girl and the one episode of Law and Order he was in, I can tell you, yes, he tends to gravitate towards more of those smaller indie films. I think beyond Marvel, I would argue one of his other biggest roles ever was like I, Tanya. Like that was probably one of his bigger roles in comparison to some of the movies he acts in, although I've seen them all. And so he is kind of one of the best people, I think, to say that. He plays in these smaller movies and they are interesting. They're not your typical blockbusters. Half the time, I don't even know if they release in theaters because of their size and just what's in the nature of them. So yeah, I think it is a great perspective, and he's a great person to be talking about it. So I'm glad he brings that perspective, but also, again, going back to my previous point, he has defended the MCU through thick and thin, and I live for that. He is one of our oldest actors here through the MCU, at least, who's been here the longest. So I really like seeing them defend what they're a part of rather than people who, and I'm not saying we have any, but some people who are like, oh, whatever. I was in it, but it was a paycheck kind of vibe. That's definitely
Yeah.
not how Sebastian is. But the last thing, also Thunderbolts related as promised, or at least in the realm of Thunderbolts, I should say, is Scarlett Johansson is actually involved in the project, which I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, so she's actually an executive producer. And it was interesting, as I was reading articles about this, they were pointing out, we did hear, I think it was either late last year, early this year, that she was going to be back involved in the MCU. It was kind of a little bit nebulous as to what that meant. Then it kind of, now is clear. Okay, it's behind the camera doing all this stuff. And the article pointed out, so many characters from her film are in this movie. You've got Taskmaster, you got her sister, you've got her father, and those characters are continuations from a film that she also was an executive producer on. So she has a really good understanding of a lot of these characters. I mean, technically, even Valentina was in her film in the end credit scene, right? So there's a lot of continuations. You can consider this partially a sequel to her film. And so for that reason, it makes a lot of sense for her to come in and, be a part of this. And also they were saying they're trying to get some of these not older, but like actors from the OG, back in, because they have been stumbling. So it makes sense to, even if they're not in front of the camera, get their perspective, because they have, this long vision on the MCU, and they were a part of so many of these incredibly popular, well-received films.
Yeah, and I want to say, I think you said so many important things there, and I think I'm going to take it from the MCU point of view. And all I've seen people say when this trailer dropped was the feeling of it being very similar to The Winter Soldier, which she was obviously in, played a huge part in, arguably one of the best to this day Marvel movies ever made. So I think bringing in somebody who has the experience of being in that movie, having the experience of being an on-the-ground hero. She's not out here in space, although she did go to space, but she's not typically in space. She's not dealing with the magic realm typically. On her day-to-day, she is a spy. She's an assassin. And so I think kind of taking that vibe and bringing, honestly the it girl. She's the it girl. Let's be real. And bringing that kind of story and making sure that this emulates that, because again, these guys are pretty much all ground level types of fighters. I mean, they all like Ghost has some weird things that she does because of the phasing and stuff, but for the most part, like they're soldiers, they're assassins, like I said, all these other great things, but they're ground level fighters. So I think bringing her in for this is so critical from that perspective as well. And I'm really excited. I love the Black Widow movie. Regardless of timing of when it came out, it was an amazing movie. That is one that I actually like genuinely enjoy rewatching. So I'm really excited to see what she brings to this movie.
Yeah, I think just bringing her back is such a smart move, and I'm really excited. I think just having this whole episode dedicated to that film just made me even more excited, knowing that we're starting to get concrete details and that soon enough we'll be getting more and more trailers and things. You can start to piece together maybe a little bit about a plot. So, more to come, but this is an exciting update.
Oh, for sure. And also it means that she's on good terms with Disney again. So yay, that's exciting too. But this has been this week's Sister Scoop. Thank you for tuning in. Come back next week for another round of Marvel news. And of course, check out our podcast, as right now we are covering Agatha All Along as it comes out weekly. See you guys.